I never expected that my life would take such a positive turn because of someone I once assumed was just another strict and distant corporate boss. When I joined the company 3 years ago, I was desperate for a job. The market was tight, my savings were running out, and I had just moved to Dallas after a rough breakup that left me emotionally drained. I landed the position at Caldwell & Sons Logistics through a friend who barely knew the HR coordinator, but I was grateful just to get a foot in the door. That's where I first met my boss, Mr. Ethan Caldwell. At first glance, Ethan was exactly what you'd expect from a man running a multi-million-dollar logistics company. He was tall, always dressed immaculately in crisp suits, and carried a calm, controlled demeanor that bordered on intimidating. He wasn't one for small talk, and during my first week, I noticed how even senior staff members spoke with a certain caution around him. Naturally, I assumed he'd be the kind of boss who cared more about deadlines and numbers than the people working behind them. I started off as an operations assistant. The job was demanding: long hours, tight schedules, and constant pressure to coordinate truck routes and warehouse inventories across multiple states. I made a few mistakes in those first few months. Once, I accidentally sent the wrong shipping schedule to one of our key partners, which delayed a delivery by 2 days. I stayed late, trying to fix it, terrified that I'd be let go. The next morning, I was summoned to Ethan's office. I walked in, expecting to be fired on the spot. Instead, he calmly asked me to sit down. He didn't yell. He didn't even seem angry. He just said, "Sam, everyone makes mistakes. What matters is how you respond. What did you learn from it?" That question caught me off guard. No one had ever asked me that in a job before. I explained the oversight and the steps I took to correct it. He nodded, then gave me a few tips for how to avoid similar issues going forward. And that was it. No punishment. No scare tactics. Just support. That was the first moment I realized Ethan Caldwell was different. Over the next year, I began to see more of the kind of leader he really was. Ethan was the type of boss who led by example. He came in early, stayed late when needed, and never asked his team to do something he wasn't willing to do himself. One time, during a particularly brutal winter storm, half our drivers were stuck and couldn't deliver shipments. Ethan didn't just stay in his office. He grabbed a company truck and helped deliver 2 urgent loads himself. I found out about it later because he didn't brag, he just did what needed to be done. The real turning point for me came during the pandemic. Business slowed down, and a lot of companies in our sector began downsizing. I was worried. Everyone was. But instead of laying people off, Ethan called a company-wide Zoom meeting. He looked tired but determined. "I will not let this company survive at the cost of my people," he said. "We're going to tighten operations, we're going to make some changes, but no one's losing their job." He reduced his own salary, paused executive bonuses, and encouraged voluntary PTO sharing so those with more vacation time could donate it to those who needed it. It wasn't just words. He backed them up. He personally called employees who were sick or had family emergencies. When one of the warehouse supervisors, Lisa, lost her husband to COVID, Ethan arranged for her to have full paid leave for 2 months, covered her health insurance premiums, and even had meals delivered to her home weekly. Seeing all this changed how I viewed leadership. I started working harder not out of fear or obligation, but because I genuinely respected the man I worked for. That respect deepened even more when I faced a personal crisis of my own. In late 2022, my younger brother Jacob got into a bad motorcycle accident. He was in critical condition, and I needed to fly to Denver immediately. I went straight to Ethan's office, trying to explain everything quickly. Before I could finish, he stood up and said, "Family comes first. Go. Don't worry about work. I'll have HR arrange emergency leave. Keep us updated when you can." That kindness didn't end there. While I was in Denver, Ethan sent flowers to the hospital and called me personally once a week just to ask how things were going. He even covered a portion of my travel expenses out of his own pocket, saying, "You shouldn't have to worry about money when you're trying to be there for your family." Jacob eventually recovered, and when I returned to work, I felt more motivated than ever. My performance improved, and about 6 months later, I was promoted to operations manager. It wasn't just a title, it was the result of a boss who had believed in me, supported me, and shown me how to lead with integrity. There were other small but meaningful ways Ethan impacted the workplace. He remembered people's birthdays. He had handwritten notes delivered to employees who went above and beyond. He created a mentorship program that paired junior employees with experienced staff to help them grow. He once hosted a company picnic, where he grilled burgers for the entire team himself. It was clear that to him, the company wasn't just about profit. It was about people. What struck me most was how little recognition he ever sought for himself. When news articles praised Caldwell & Sons for its employee-first approach, he deflected the credit. "It's my team," he'd say. "They're the ones who make it all happen." One day, while grabbing coffee in the break room, I asked him what drove him to be the kind of leader he was. He smiled and told me a story. When he was younger, working a low-level shipping job, his own boss had humiliated him in front of a group of co-workers for making a small error. That experience stuck with him. He told himself that if he ever got the chance to lead, he would do it differently. He never forgot how it felt to be looked down on. So, he made it his mission to build a company where people felt safe, respected, and valued. Hearing that gave me goosebumps. It also reminded me why I wanted to stay at Caldwell & Sons long term. In a world where so many people dread going to work, I felt lucky, grateful even, to be part of a company where compassion and professionalism walked hand in hand. Years later, when Ethan announced his retirement, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. He gave a short, heartfelt speech and ended it by saying, "The measure of a good boss isn't how many people work for you, it's how many people you've helped rise." I hope I did right by you. He did more than right. He changed lives. He changed mine. To this day, whenever someone asks me what makes a great boss, I tell them about Ethan Caldwell. Not because he was perfect or because he ran a successful business, but because he never forgot to be human.